Okay, so now that we've gone over the basics from top to bottom, let's go to work and try to apply what we've learned. I thought we'd start out with the easiest stuff first, and that would be landscapes because they usually stand still. Basic landscapes, whether you're in a rural setting like farm, country, or wilderness, to cityscapes and skyscrapers, are an extremely popular subject for photographers. I imagine this is because a successful landscape can be a still life, that is with no people in it. It's just that with you and your camera, the light and your imagination are all that hold you back. You're totally an artist with this stuff, totally, and it's quite remarkable. You can do anything you want. Landscapes are a great way to unwind. They're beautiful, absolutely beautiful, when done well, and in good light, of course. But in this lecture, we're going to go beyond the obvious and really make your landscape picture sing. We want to make your picture stand out and get noticed. So let's get started. There's a lot of bad landscape pictures out there. I don't want you to make the same mistakes that I have. For example, get there early, stay late. Get there far ahead of the prime light you hope to be shooting in, and explore. Find the best place to set up and the best possible angles before the light is where you need it to be. Give yourself some time, for goodness sakes. If it's a sunny day and you're planning on an evening shoot, try to visualize where the shadows are going to be and what the scene will look like just after sunset, right? When that golden glow is saturating everything in your viewfinder. I'll often use a tripod for photographing landscapes. All the time I use a tripod. Besides allowing you to shoot with a slow shutter and a high aperture to get everything tack sharp with a nice depth of field, a tripod also forces you to slow down and really think about how you're framing things, allowing you to concentrate about whether that scene in your viewfinder matters enough to be worth it. This is something I really want you to think of. Does it matter enough to be worth it? Are you paying the viewer off? Are you paying them off? Or are you just wasting their time? Even with the help of a tripod, you're probably figuring out that if you're truly serious about your landscape work, there is no such thing as a snooze button on an alarm clock. In clear weather, you've only got 2 times each day when the light will sing, and one of those times is way too early. I mean, way too early. I've got to tell you, getting up early really stinks for me. I don't like it, never have, never will. But if I don't do it, I'll miss half of that day's shooting potential when it comes to landscapes outdoors. No can do. I work for National Geographic. So when shooting landscapes, I find myself up with the chickens quite literally. To prove my point, this photo was shot just before sunrise on an Oklahoma farm. Sunrise, I'm always working sunrises. So speaking of that, let's go into the field now at dawn for a little field shoot out at a farm in rural Nebraska that we own. Let's watch not only how subtle the light is and how that's so critical, but also how once we find a good stage, we pray for the actors to appear and really liven up our landscapes. Now it's time for a rural landscape. A little bit more difficult though, actually, believe it or not. It's more simple, it's cleaner, but it's more difficult because there's a lot less going on in the countryside. By its very nature, it's relaxed and peaceful. That's tough. In an urban landscape, you have lots of things going on. City lights coming up, traffic, movement, lots of people doing interesting things, perhaps dressed up for the evening. But in a rural landscape, boy, it's quiet. It's quiet. What is it? It's farms and it's cows and it's grass and it's country roads, and that's about it. And that might be enough for you. It might be, and there's nothing wrong with that. Today, we're out in the country here. We're near Lincoln, Nebraska on a beautiful old historic farm. We've got prairie grasses sweeping away to a little house on the hill with Gothic arched windows in the front. It's just a perfect little scene. There's nothing wrong with this at all. I want everything to be sharp. I'm on a tripod. I'm at f/22. That's a tiny hole in the lens. And I'm going to shoot a few pictures here, just a couple. And there's nothing wrong with that. The house is up on the hill. It's very pretty. It's just fine. I tell you what though, I've looked at a lot of landscape pictures, my own and other people's over the years, and the ones that I'm most drawn to, the ones that are the most memorable, are the ones where there's a little something extra, a payoff, if you will. A deer in the scene, or a grizzly bear, or humans, something to kind of give me a focal point. I think of this as a stage that's set, but I don't see any players yet. And that's something that I want personally. I want there to be a payoff. So, in this case, by the way, I also want to make sure that I apply all the same rules that I did to my urban landscape to my rural one. And that is good leading lines, something to draw your eye in. In this case, it's the house with the field going to it and the walnut trees framing it. I want to think about keeping my horizon line straight. I want nice light. We're here at sunrise. That's good. I want the same things, the same tools in our toolbox to be coming into play no matter where I am. Good visual craftsmanship. That's all it is. Tell me what, I just basically have to tell myself, well, what do you want? I want everything in focus in this scene. In landscapes, I'm often shooting on f/16 or f/22. But what else do I want? I want a human figure in the landscape here. So I've brought my daughter Ellen and her friends, and they are in party dresses that we've gotten at a thrift store. So Ellen, if you wouldn't mind, I'm going to have you and your friends hold hands. I'm going to have you run into the scene. Are you ready? Okay, go for it. Go. Okay, right there. That's great. That's perfect. Come on back. Come into the sun and a little bit to the right. Rule of thirds here. The farmhouse is in the top third, the girls are in the middle, and the bottom third is just grass. So I've kind of split the picture into thirds vertically from top to bottom. Why don't you hold hands again? We'll just do a little ring around the rosy there, okay? All right? Okay, so try that. Go in a circle, go for it. Very nice. Okay, stop. I don't want to get you too dizzy. Now to finish off, I'm going to have you run out of the scene. I'm going to have you hold hands again because that way I know I'm going to see each of your dresses in color. I just want this flowing look. I'm shooting a very slow shutter so your dresses will be kind of billowy. Okay, come on out, run right past the camera, right to me. Go. Great, stop right there. Perfect, lovely. How was that? The pictures are beautiful. I can see it right now. Worth getting up at 5:30 in the morning, right? Okay, so I'll look at this scene throughout the day just to make sure that I've got something, but I guess my point is that I want to have a point to my picture. I want to go beyond the obvious and have really something in there that makes it neat, kind of like icing on the cake. And there's no reason you guys can't do this too. I mean, especially on special occasions when people are dressed up very well, why not think it out ahead of time and have your loved ones, your family, your friends, out in the environment at that time in their lives. If it's a country wedding, get them out in the country. If it's a city thing, a city wedding, get them outside the church and get them into the street or somewhere where we actually see the city in a nice time of the day. The light needs to be nice, of course, but there's no reason why all of us can't do this and really jazz up and add interest to our landscapes. Simple as that. I'll look at this throughout various times of the day to see how the light changes and to see if this will be any better, but I can't imagine it getting any better than right here, right now. It just looked perfect. You know, the most amazing thing about that, I really still don't honestly know how I got Ellen and her friends outdoors that early in the morning. We had to leave Lincoln at about 5:30 a.m., and that was not pretty. Let's look at how I handle some other scenes and why. And notice that my idea of a good landscape is a little twisted. Oh, sure, I could show you stuff like this all day long and blather on and on about it. But what fun is that? Nada, that's what. This is way too boring for my taste. It's a totally forgettable picture. I don't want to teach you guys how to do landscapes like this. But let's start with the simple things first, okay? Let's start with the simple things. Nice light, good clouds, and a warning sign. Okay, this is a baby step. Sign pictures, they're kind of easy. They're not going anywhere. But this is an example of using something that would otherwise be clutter, that sign, road impassable when wet, as a compositional element that helps to tell a story. And the sky looks kind of fierce. It looks like a tough place, okay? Next, a good example of using horizon and open space to isolate a subject that's animate. And the dog's wearing this surgery collar, so it livens it up. It gives us a little something extra. I'm trying to give readers a payoff. Viewers need to get something out of these pictures. I don't want my landscapes to be boring if I can help it. Another landscape, a little bit more complicated though, right? Here we've got an open landscape, uncluttered, big as the West. This is Montana. But from our point of view, we're moving, and the dust tells us that we're in motion. And it adds another element, really. It cleans up the scene somehow, gives us a leading line from the back forward in a way. Really though, with that dust, what's that dust do? It makes those antlers really pop out and read easily. The fact that the road's moving, the road smooths out too because we've got a slow shutter speed. It's cloudy out, but that dust really stands out and helps us there. We've got a dead deer in the back of a pickup truck. So a little something interesting to give us a little bit of an edge on our landscapes. Okay, what next? Here's something that's happening fairly quickly. It happens all over the country, 4th of July. But if you thought about this and scouted a little bit, you're going to know where to be ahead of time. The time to figure out where to be is not right when they're blowing the fireworks off. It's ahead of time. Now, if I was up close, right, where the audience was, I wouldn't have been able to use a long lens, and those trees would have been just kind of visual clutter in a way, right? In this frame, though, they're minimalized, and they serve to give the fireworks kind of context. By staying back and being down low, that smoke and the light, it shows us where we are. We're in the woods of northern Minnesota, and there are people enjoying the fireworks, and we get the impression that is a big burst. Remember the very first ideas we discussed about composition? They still count with landscapes, by the way. Try out rule of thirds, pacing, putting your horizon at different levels of the frame, and looking for natural framing devices. All very, very important, okay? I'll often use a wide-angle lens, by the way, and a bit of height to show the land in a grand scale. But if you're too low to the ground, sometimes you'll lose some of a sense of where you are. You know, aerials are a very effective way to convey a sense of place. You can do a cheap aerial even by going up a ladder or on the roof of your house or other structures, like I've done here, going up on a little grain elevator. But be careful though. I'm always nervous around ladders, and rightfully so. Falling off a ladder is one of the leading causes of paralysis, believe it or not. Anyway, taken from the top of a little grain elevator like this, we see plenty of landscape. It has the added element of little people in it for scale, doesn't it? Notice that I've used a long lens here too. Compresses distance, makes those fields look epic, like they go on forever. Or look at this. Little height on the back of a horse can get you an aerial feel. It serves you really well. It gives you more of a grand feel. And you're no more than, I don't know, 8 feet up, something like that. Works out really well. It does. Now remember, long lenses can narrow your field of view on the world, but they're also very good for landscapes because they accentuate certain aspects, don't they? They really compress distances. Nice feel. You can use a long lens. Just use them judiciously when you're talking about landscapes. Now let's talk about layering. Layering is king, even in landscapes. I think about layering all the time. I think about the dance of life. Landscapes need to be good pictures too, you guys. You don't get off the hook just as it's a landscape. I want your landscapes and mine to look unlike anything I've ever seen. I want them layered. Layering your pictures by thinking about your foreground, your middle ground, your repeating patterns. So important and so satisfying. The dog, the saddle, the cow, the truck, the big landscape in Montana. Layer, layer, layer all the time. Look at the layering in this. The muddy windshield of my rental van, my friend Mark Ellis and his horse, the hay bales, the snow, the building, the clouds. Layering, layering, layering. That is a landscape. It is. We know where we are. It's a landscape, but it's fairly interesting because it's layered. Now look at this. Let's say we're doing a salt formation. I'll get down low. I'll use a really wide angle lens all the time. Always. Try to do a really wide angle lens, really try to get things to stand out. Plants, other little features, geologic features. This is some really ancient bush. It's okay. I'm down low. Get that object in the foreground and then I use the widest lens I can. Let's throw some feet on there to give it a little bit more of a, I don't know, something else, a little spice from Chile, okay? I use that 14 to 24 millimeter zoom with the aperture very small, f11 or so, everything's sharp. I lower that camera, get down, really accentuate that foreground. I do it all the time, all the time. Back here in the US, I do it here too. Look at that. What is that? A hog-nosed snake. Now this is a landscape photo, right? But I'm way down low, way down low. What happens? When you're down low, with that type of an angle, wide lens, it's hog-nosed snake, he's playing dead. He's playing dead. We're a threat to him standing there. Even though I'm down low, I can see the landscape, right? What does down low do? It accentuates your foreground subject, makes it huge, right? The gravel of the road allows our subject to read easily. It's not in grass or anything, nice and clean. And although it's a ground level shot, it still reads as a landscape. Where are we? We're in the woods of southern Illinois. Because we don't have grasses, we have no obstructions, we're just on a gravel road, we can see where we are, okay? So by lowering your camera position, like when he wakes up, you can really make a star out of that snake, or a rock or a bush, whatever. But the cost in being down low is less landscape in a way, most of the time, okay? Because you have grasses and trees and so forth. It's a tightrope walk. Lowering your camera means less landscape, but bigger and more dramatic foreground objects. Just something to remember, okay? Sometimes now I'll cheat. I'll be low, but I'll be right on the edge of a cliff, and I can get the best of both worlds. So I try to think about that all the time. Can I be down low? Can I still see the land? Because the lower you get, the more interesting that foreground gets, the more impactful, the more dramatic. I wish that snake was right there. That would help that scene. Or let's take this scene of Sledders. Sledders in Cortland, Nebraska on the DeVries farm. Okay, nice little scene, that's fine, but watch what happens. Ground level, oh, let's get up. Look, we're in a bucket truck now. Look at how this helps. Now we have this epic kind of Currier and Ives scene. One kid's running to catch up because he fell off the inner tube being towed by the tractor. So what I'm trying to get at here, hopefully in a clear way, go beyond the obvious. Add life and complexity and movement to your landscapes. Please, try to do that all the time if you can. Another trick to add drama to your landscape pictures. On a clear day, point your camera the opposite direction as the sunset. Point it the opposite direction. You will be amazed at what the other direction looks like. Oh man, the color. Look at the color. That's not looking at sunset, that's looking east. East at sunset. You get beautiful clouds on the horizon at sunset, everybody wants to shoot that way. I say, no. Turn the other way, look east. Everything's going to be awash in that beautiful red reflected light. And also, don't shoot only on blue sky days to avoid bad weather. No, bad weather makes for unusual and hence great light in photos. Wear a raincoat if you're afraid of getting wet, but get moving. Nothing but blue skies gets boring, and you don't get a chance for lightning on a blue sky day very often. Listen, there is zero excuse, in my opinion, for bad light on a landscape shot. When somebody shows me lousy light on something that ain't going nowhere, I just say to them, are you kidding me? Go back and shoot it again. I've literally had several people over the years show me pictures shot in a cemetery in high noon light. In a nice way, I say to them, oh, okay, well, can you explain why maybe you didn't wait for the light to get better? And they say, oh, well, I was on a bus tour and we only stopped once that day and it was for lunch at noon and there was a cemetery. And I say, okay, I understand, but that doesn't make your picture any better. Your excuses don't make your pictures any better. I say next time, drive your own car and stop whenever you want, hopefully in killer beautiful light. Think about this. Now, before you go thinking that I'm all high and mighty, I got news for you. I'm guilty of bad light in landscapes too. In fact, one of my first landscape shoots nearly cost me my big break at National Geographic. And man, this was really quite a traumatic event. It was my first big break. I was doing a story called Pathways to Discovery. It was for a book on the Potomac River Trail. And the highlight of it, the crown jewel, was Mount Vernon, George Washington's home. So I was assigned to document George Washington's home, and I went there. I mean, I was wearing new clothes, and I had shined my shoes, and I had my gear, and I had permission to be there, and they opened the gates at 9 o'clock in the summer, and I ran in, and I got pictures of people outside, and they're shooting away. Look at that. They're shooting away, and the kids are running around outside, and I'm just really working it. I've got there it is, Mount Vernon. I'm very proud of that. Then I move inside. The light of the day is getting a little harsher. It's 10 or 11 o'clock, and I shoot inside, and I show the beautiful woodwork and all. And I remember going into my editor's office, and he was looking at the pictures, and he was going through them as fast as he could. And I was like, what's going on? And he said, well, you know, these pictures, I can't use any of them. And I said, well, why? He said, 9 o'clock light. It's summertime. What are you thinking? 9 o'clock light. You go back at 5 a.m., not 9 a.m., 5 a.m., and get it when the light is beautiful. I said, well, they open the gates at 9. He said, you go back and get a squirrel eating a nut or a leaf or a guard walking a German shepherd around the place, but do something that's beautiful. And so I went back, and at 5:30 a.m., indeed, they had German shepherd guard dogs patrolling the place at that time, and that ran 2 pages big. So the moral of the story, folks, is the editor is always right, and the pictures turned out much, much better. I needed to be working when the light was good. So sure, it's all about the light. but work smart or get sick, actually. I mentioned that before with landscapes, whether you're rural or urban, they're all about light. Try to get a good amount of sleep. I try to knock off in the middle of the day and not work in the harsh stuff. I can't burn the candle at both ends, you know? Midday is when I'm laying low, I'm eating, I'm resting, I'm trying not to get sick, I'm trying to not get my batteries so low that I actually catch cold or something. I'm researching my next shoot, taking a nap in the middle of the day. Don't tell my boss, but it's true. If I'm working both ends, I cannot afford to get sick, and I don't want to be miserable. I'm working great light, great light. That's what I want to do. Now, to get the best light, I am routinely up a couple of hours before sunrise, and in the summer, that's a long day. I give myself an hour to get up and get ready. Then there's usually some kind of usable ambient light starting about 45 minutes before sunrise. And you know the real bonus about shooting long before sunrise and long after? Few others do it. And that is a shame. When the sun's just below the horizon, there are no such things as harsh shadows. So you can really shoot anything extremely well and hassle-free. Your own shadow won't exist, so you can shoot in almost any direction and get away with it. It's really nice. It's a great secret. Once the sun comes up, or just before it's set, however, it's a totally different story. You've really got to watch your own shadow, or maybe just try to have fun with it, I suppose. I've shot my own shadow a million times, all the time. If there's nothing else happening, I'm out in the desert in Arizona, I'll throw my own shadow on a scene just to liven it up a little bit. I'm wearing a hat, looks like a cowboy or something, just to keep it from getting too boring. I do that all the time, obviously. A lot of times I'm the only person out there for 20, 30, 40 miles, so I shoot my own shadow. Which brings me to another topic. I have seen very few, and I mean very few, landscapes that grab me, that don't have something going on in them. I really treasure those little moments that happen when something animate is introduced into the scene. It doesn't have to be much, but please, at least when you're showing pictures to me, give me something to look at, some kind of payoff. To me, a great landscape is really a starting point, a stage upon which I hope the players will appear if I wait long enough. I know this isn't a conventional way to approach landscapes, and that an empty scene is more traditional and is quite satisfying for some folks, but I think that's the easy way. I do. I think that's the easy way of doing it. Just an empty landscape because you didn't want to bother anybody, you didn't want to get anybody's picture, you didn't want to have to talk to anybody or wait for wildlife. I don't know. Let's look at some landscapes from Alaska's North Slope. These are big scenes. These ran in National Geographic. Okay, that's all right. They're big and they're epic, and landscapes without anything else, they work enough for Geographic, but I really like it when there's something else. Maybe a rainbow going over that caribou antler. Rainbows help, you know? I really try to work things whenever I'm anywhere. I really try to give them something special to make them worth looking at every time. Now, when I go to Africa, I'm thinking about that as well. I'm trying to tell a story now, but I'm also trying to really give our readers something that's surprising. I love adding actors. This is on the edge of Queen Elizabeth National Park. You can see the farm ground comes right up to the edge of the park. There's a lot of people there, a lot of small farmers there. This is our parklands for the animals. But what else? What can we do? Let's liven it up. Okay, again, nothing really animate here besides the plant life, but something interesting, more of a pattern, more interesting, I guess. It's basically a geological feature that's volcanic formed lakes. All right, that's fine, but where are the actors? Come on, where are the actors? Oh, here we go, Cape Buffalo. Isn't this a little better? We go from these pictures to being kind of quiet and fine art with those volcanic lakes to really having some oomph to singing. Now, granted, these are all done out of an airplane, but you know what? They're just big and epic, and they've got some movement. They've got stuff going on. That's what I really want. This could be actually out of a car, you know, whereas the others were out of an airplane. This is just out of a car driving to the airstrip one day. That simple. What else? Out on a lake at dusk as women fill their water jugs. That'll work too. Nothing wrong with that. You know what? I consider this a landscape. There's no land to be seen, really. Let's say we can't afford an airplane. I'm telling you, look at these. You can make frames. You don't need an airplane. You don't need to go to Africa. You can make great frames no matter where you are. So do these pictures challenge your notion of landscapes? I hope they do. I hope they do. Look at this. Dung beetles? Dung beetles? Yeah, right down in there with them. I consider this a landscape. We're right down low. Why not? Why not? I think you could do this anywhere. You know you could do this stuff anywhere, don't you? Of course you do. Of course you can. Note that none of these were using the landscape photographer's best friend either, the tripod and the cable release. That's because when I'm in an airplane, I can't use it. When those dung beetles are rolling the poop around, I can't use a tripod, right? I like getting away with not using a tripod and a cable release. I use them sometimes and sometimes I don't. It just depends on my mood and what I'm trying to get. Now let's look at another set of pictures where I did use a tripod and a cable release for most of these images. But right here in the US, these are in the Everglades, right? That's just with my car headlights before the sun came up, right by the gate, just lighting up the grass, a little bit of ambient. Fine, that's just fine. I'm there an hour before sunrise. Not very fun, but you know what? That's the time when your headlights will show up. Using a tripod and a cable release, absolute must here. This is a very long exposure, probably a quarter to a half second or so. Okay, this is along a walking trail, an alligator right there, a tripod and a cable release, and I'm standing off to the side with a little bit of flash. So the tripod and the cable release become my assistant that day. One of my favorites, off an observation tower where black vultures like to sit on the roof. I didn't use a tripod and a cable release here because these vultures were moving around too fast and too quickly off the roof of this observation tower. The moment one takes off, try to get him in the frame, and like magic, we've got a free aerial because we're up in this observation, right? We're up in the observation tower. Now notice this landscape is mostly sky. I liked it, and that's enough. I'm trying to please myself here, figuring that, okay, maybe somebody else will like it too if I do. Now you remember our dung beetles in Africa? Same thing here. Getting down low right on the deck, this time with a Florida chicken turtle. He looks a little irritated, doesn't he? He sure does. All right, so for those of you who say, there's no way I'm going out in the countryside, I don't like the ticks and I don't like to get out in the country, you know, I might get a sunburn. I say, you don't know what you're missing, but let's stick to the city. For me, I can get good frames in the city too because I'm thinking about that, so I'm totally on board. To build any landscape, country or city, I always think, what's the point that I want to get across? And I start with an anchor of some kind. It could be a building or a fruit stand, you name it. Let's go into the field again in Lincoln and see how we might put together a nice urban landscape. It all starts with scouting and nice light, of course. Landscape time. We have two types of landscapes, don't we? Rural and urban. Obviously, this ain't rural right here. We're urban. Downtown Lincoln, Nebraska. We're in the Haymarket District, which is their old brick warehouse district. It's lovely down here. This is where it's happening. Saturday night, we're at the world famous Mill Coffee Shop, one of my favorite places. Now, we're going to talk about what makes this scene good. I mean, I've scouted this out. I've looked around. I think this is one of the nicest places to shoot an urban landscape. Why is that? Well, take a look. Look how nice this is. It's like it's made for pictures. Brick warehouses going away in a line. Little twinkly lights up in the ceiling. Let me shoot a picture real quick and just see how this looks. It looks just fine, but it ain't great. I think it can be great, but we need to move in closer. We really need to work this and get in closer to the brick buildings, to the people that are sitting in there. Try to tell a story, a little bit of a story. What's going on with these people on a Saturday night? So let's get to work. All right, so here we are, much closer. This looks like it's more interesting. Gee, these people look familiar to me for some reason. So it looks like Kyle and Rebecca are out on a date and Grace has been stood up. I think that's the story. Anyway, she's checking her phone. Look at that, she's just got a little bit of sun hitting her. Last light of the day. How lucky is that? Is your man coming around the corner, Grace? Is he coming in from over there, do you think? Oh, thanks for looking that way. Now look at this. Now this is nice. A little bit of light gracing her, twinkly lights overhead, and leading lines like you can't believe. All brick, all the way, 100 years old, right down the lane. I mean, this picture is, this is already made up for me. I don't have to work at this. I just see this, and it's done. It is done. This is exactly what we need it to be. It's a picture that works in layers. It's a picture that works as far as storytelling. And look at that, last light of the day. Perfect. That is the Haymarket area in Lincoln, by the way, a great place to spend a Saturday night. So let's say you're in unfamiliar territory and not in your hometown. No problem at all. You've got the skills to pay the bills now. Let me give you one little last illustration. Look at this. Amsterdam. I was in Amsterdam a while back. And you know what? This is an illustration of why you never, and I mean never, put off a good shoot. Ever. Because this was one time when the canals had frozen solid enough for people to skate, and they had not frozen solid in a long time. So let's just look through these. I had a camera with me. I always have a camera with me, right? Even if you think something's going to be mundane, carry that camera with you all the time. I'm looking up and down the canal. I'm looking at the people coming and going, and I'm thinking, look at the buildings, and look at the color, and layering. I can do everything I want to do. To me, country, city, it doesn't matter. I'm building, I'm watching people come and go. Look at that. The light's nice. Once in a while, a kid falls down. I'm moving around to the side, and oh, look at this. A wooden shoe boat, how cool is that? All right, and the little kids skating on one leg. That maybe is the picture. I was satisfied with that. It looks like a postcard, but that's okay. I liked it. It pleased me. That's good enough. It's not perfect. I stayed there and I worked it a little farther into the night till the lights came up in the houses. These folks are photographing a young one there, but you know what? It was not good. It was not as good as that. That to me was the frame. It pleased me. Shoot over with. All right, that worked. That worked. So the bottom line is this. Pick your subjects wisely and find something interesting, please. Try to focus on something that you can get repeated chances at. You'll be glad you did, and so will anyone that has to look at your pictures. Make it worth their while, please. Your assignment. Your assignment for this lecture, in nice light, of course, shoot the same landscape, rural or urban, your choice, from ground level, knee-high, waist-high, head-high, and overhead. Doesn't have to be that high overhead. Notice the difference. These should be worlds apart, even in your own backyard. Our next lecture, one of my favorites, wildlife. Come back, please.